The dust swirled across the weathered floorboards of the trading post as Josephine James clutched her father's pocket watch, the last memento of a man she would never see again. Abandoned at dawn with nothing but the clothes on her back and the darkness that had been her constant companion since childhood, she strained to hear the footsteps of the family who had left her behind, a family that had decided a blind daughter was too much of a burden on their journey west. It was 1875 in Kingston, Colorado, a mining town nestled in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, where fortunes were made and broken on the promise of silver. The spring air carried the scent of pine and possibility, though for Josephine, possibility had always been a foreign concept. "Miss, you can't stay here," said Harold Wilkins, the trading post's proprietor. His voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. "I run a business, not a boarding house." Josephine nodded, her chestnut hair falling across her face, partially hiding the unfocused hazel eyes that saw nothing but had once long ago witnessed the beauty of a sunset. "I understand, sir. My family will return shortly." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but it was all she had. Harold sighed. "They've been gone 3 hours, miss. Left their wagon tracks heading west. I don't think they're coming back." Josephine's fingers tightened around the watch. She had known, of course. The whispered conversations between her aunt and uncle, the way her cousin had stopped speaking to her days ago. The family that had reluctantly taken her in after her father's death had finally decided she wasn't worth the trouble. "I have nowhere else to go," she admitted softly. The trading post door swung open, bringing with it the sounds of horses and the low murmur of men's voices. Boots scuffed across the floor, stopping just a few feet from where Josephine sat. "Harold, got those supplies I ordered?" The voice was deep, with a drawl that suggested the man had come from somewhere farther south. "Just arrived yesterday, Colton. Let me fetch them from the back." Josephine heard Harold's footsteps retreat, leaving her alone with the newcomer. She straightened her back, trying to appear composed despite the fear churning in her stomach. "You all right, miss?" the stranger asked after a moment of silence. "Yes, thank you," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Colton Davis," he introduced himself. "Don't believe I've seen you in Kingston before. Josephine James." She tilted her head slightly, a habit she'd developed to better hear the person speaking. I'm just passing through." She heard him step closer, felt the floorboards shift under his weight. "Forgive me for saying so, Miss James, but you don't look like you're passing through. You look like someone who's been left behind." The perceptiveness of his observation made her chest tighten. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's looking," he replied. Harold returned, the sound of a heavy crate hitting the counter punctuating his arrival. "Here you are, Colton. Feed, ammunition, coffee, and those books you asked for." "Books?" Josephine couldn't help her surprise. Colton chuckled. "Even cowboys read, Miss James." "And speaking of situations," Harold interjected, "this young lady's family abandoned her here this morning, blind as a bat and nowhere to go." Josephine flinched at the blunt description, her cheeks burning with humiliation. "Harold," Colton's voice had hardened. "That's no way to speak about a lady." "Just stating facts," Harold defended. "What am I supposed to do with her? The sheriff's out of town for another 2 days, and Widow Peterson's boarding house is full with those surveyors from Denver." A heavy silence fell, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Josephine wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. Then she felt a presence beside her, and a gentle hand took hers. The touch was calloused but warm, steady and sure. "Miss James," Colton said, his voice closer now. "I've got a ranch about an hour's ride from town. My sister Rebecca's there and we could use some help with the house. If you're willing, I'll be your eyes until you figure out what you want to do next." The unexpected offer left her speechless. In a world that had only taken from her, here was someone offering to give. "Why would you help me?" she finally managed to ask. "You don't know me." "My pa always said a man's character is judged by what he does when no one's watching," Colton replied. "And right now, it's just us three in this room. So what do you say?" Josephine hesitated, weighing her options which were, in reality, non-existent. Stay and be at Harold's mercy, or go with this stranger who had at least shown her kindness. "I'll come with you," she decided, rising from her seat, her hand still in his. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," he warned, but there was a smile in his voice. "Ranch life isn't easy even with your sight." He guided her hand to his arm, and she felt the sturdy cotton of his shirt, the strength of the muscle beneath. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. Davis. Call me Colton." He paid for his supplies and led her outside. The sounds of Kingston enveloped her horses nickering, men calling to one another, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer. Josephine breathed it all in, creating a mental picture of the town she might never see again. "Here we are," Colton said, stopping. "My wagon's right in front. Let me help you up." His hands were strong as they circled her waist, lifting her onto the wagon seat as if she weighed nothing at all. Josephine settled herself, smoothing her skirt over her knees, her heart racing from more than just the exertion. "You comfortable?" he asked, climbing up beside her. "Yes, thank you." The wagon jerked into motion and Josephine gripped the edge of the seat. "Tell me about your ranch," she requested, wanting to fill the silence with something other than her own anxious thoughts. "It's not much yet," Colton admitted. 200 acres, most of it grazing land. Got about 60 head of cattle, a few horses. The house is small, just 3 rooms, but it's solid. Built it myself last year. And your sister, Rebecca, you said, she's 18. Came out to join me 6 months ago after our ma passed. She's a good girl, bit headstrong. Reminds me of a young colt sometimes, all legs and energy. Josephine smiled at the description. "I'm 20, she offered in return. "My father was a school teacher back in St. Louis. After he died of consumption 2 years ago, my mother's brother took me in. They were heading to California when they decided I would be better off elsewhere." She felt Colton's gaze on her, though she couldn't see it. "Their loss," he said simply, and flicked the reins to urge the horses faster. The journey to the Davis ranch was filled with Colton's descriptions of the passing landscape, the way the mountains rose in the distance, the color of the wildflowers dotting the meadows, the hawks circling overhead. Josephine drank in every detail, painting pictures in her mind of a world she had once seen but now could only imagine. "There it is," he announced finally. "Davis Ranch. It's not much to look at yet, but it's home." The wagon slowed, then stopped. Josephine heard a door slam and quick footsteps approaching. "Colton, you're back early. Did you get the female voice cut off abruptly. "Who's this?" "Rebecca, meet Miss Josephine James." "Miss James, my sister Rebecca." "It's a pleasure," Josephine said, turning toward the voice. "Miss James needs a place to stay for a while," Colton explained. "I thought she could help you with the house, and in return we provide room and board." "Oh," Rebecca's voice was uncertain. "Can she, I mean?" "I'm blind, Miss Davis," Josephine stated plainly, "not deaf or incapable. I can cook, clean, and manage most household tasks. I won't be a burden." A moment of awkward silence followed before Rebecca spoke again, her tone warmer. "Well, we could certainly use the help. Colton's idea of cleaning is moving the dust from one place to another." Colton laughed, a rich sound that made Josephine smile despite her nervousness. "See, already earning your keep by giving Rebecca someone to gang up on me with." He helped Josephine down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Let me show you around, get you acquainted with the place." For the next hour, Colton guided Josephine through the small ranch house, patiently describing each room, placing her hands on door frames, table edges, the back of chairs, creating a tactile map she could navigate. The house smelled of pine wood and coffee, with an underlying scent of leather that she assumed came from Colton himself. "This will be your room," he said, leading her into a small chamber off the main living area. "It's not much, just a bed, a chest of drawers, and a rocking chair by the window, but it's yours for as long as you need it." Josephine ran her fingers along the quilt covering the bed, feeling the intricate stitching. "It's perfect. I can't thank you enough. Like I said, we need the help." Rebecca tries, but she's got her hands full with the chickens and the vegetable garden. Having someone to manage the house will be a blessing. "Still," Josephine insisted, "not many would have done what you did today." Colton was quiet for a moment. "I know what it's like to be alone in the world, Miss James. When I came out here 3 years ago, I didn't have a friend for 100 miles. If not for the kindness of strangers, I wouldn't have made it through that first winter." The honesty in his voice touched something deep within her. "Please call me Josephine, or Josie if you prefer. My father always called me Josie." "Josie," he repeated, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "It suits you." "Colton," Rebecca called from outside. "The chickens are out again," he sighed. "Duty calls, rest a bit if you'd like." "Supper's usually around 6. Left alone, Josephine carefully explored her new room, memorizing the steps from the door to the bed, from the bed to the window, from the window to the dresser. 7 steps this way, 5 steps that way. She traced the outline of the window, feeling the rough wooden sill beneath her fingertips. Outside, she could hear Colton and Rebecca laughing as they chased after errant chickens. The normality of it, the simple joy in their voices, made her throat tight with longing. How long had it been since she'd been part of a family that laughed together? As the day wore on, Josephine helped Rebecca prepare supper, a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and salt pork. To her relief, Rebecca didn't hover anxiously as Josephine worked, merely directed her to where things were kept and then let her manage on her own. "You're good at this," Rebecca commented as Josephine expertly kneaded the cornbread dough. "Better than me, and I can see what I'm doing." Josephine smiled. "My mother taught me before she died. She said I needed to be twice as capable as other girls if I was going to make my way in the world." "She sounds wise," Rebecca said, setting plates on the table. "Our ma was the same way. Taught us both to cook clean, so even taught Colton, which most found scandalous. She said a man who can't take care of himself has no business trying to build a life out west." The front door opened, and Colton's boots thumped across the floor. "Something smells good." "Josie made cornbread," Rebecca informed him, "and it actually rose, unlike the bricks I've been serving you." "Is that so?" Colton's voice was closer now, just behind Josephine. "Well then, looks like you're already proving your worth, Josie." The way he said her name sent a flutter through her stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. She turned, nearly bumping into him, and felt the heat of his body close to hers. "Careful," he murmured, his hands coming up to steady her shoulders. Supper was a lively affair, with Rebecca peppering Josephine with questions about St. Louis and her journey west. Colton was quieter, but Josephine could feel his attention on her as she spoke. "What was it like, growing up in a city?" Rebecca asked, passing Josephine more cornbread. "Noisy," Josephine replied with a smile. "Always people coming and going, carriages on the streets, steamboats on the river. But also wonderful, there was music on every corner, and my father would take me to concerts and plays." "When did you lose your sight?" Colton asked, his voice gentle. Josephine set down her fork. "I was 10. There was a fever that swept through the city. Many died, I survived, but the sickness took my sight." "Do you remember what things looked like?" Rebecca asked, curiosity evident in her voice. I remember colors, Josephine said softly. The blue of the sky, the green of the grass. My father's red hair, but the details fade a little more each year. I'm afraid someday I won't remember it all. Then we'll have to be extra good at describing things, Rebecca declared. Right, Colton? Right, he agreed. Starting with dessert. We've got dried apple pie, and it's the ugliest thing you've ever seen, but it tastes like heaven. Josephine laughed, grateful for the lightening of the mood. Then I'm glad I can't see it. Later, as Rebecca cleared the dishes, Colton invited Josephine to sit on the porch. Best time of day, he explained, guiding her to a bench. Sun's just going down, painting the mountains gold and pink. Air's cooling off and everything gets quiet, like the whole world's taking a breath. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the chirping of crickets and the occasional lowing of cattle in the distance. Thank you, Josephine said finally, for everything today. You've thanked me enough, Colton replied. From now on, we're even. You work, you earn your keep, no more gratitude necessary. Fair enough, she agreed, though I reserve the right to be thankful in private, he chuckled. I can't stop what goes on in your head, I suppose. No, she smiled. No one can. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Josephine learned the layout of the house and yard, moving with increasing confidence through her new domain. She cooked and cleaned, mended clothes, and even helped Rebecca with the chickens once she'd memorized the coop's location. Colton was often gone from dawn till dusk, working the cattle or mending fences, but he always returned with stories of his day, painting verbal pictures of the ranch and surrounding countryside that were so vivid Josephine sometimes dreamed in color again. One evening in late May, a storm rolled in from the mountains. Josephine stood on the porch, feeling the electricity in the air, the wind whipping her skirts around her ankles. Storm's coming, Colton said, joining her. A big one by the looks of it. The cattle? She asked, knowing his concerns without him voicing them. Moved them to the lower pasture this morning. They should be fine. I'm more worried about that section of roof over the kitchen. Been meaning to fix it for weeks. Thunder rumbled in the distance and Josephine instinctively stepped closer to him. I love storms, she admitted. The sound, the smell, the way the air changes. It's one of the few times I don't feel at a disadvantage. How so? He asked, and she could feel him turn toward her. In the dark, we're all blind, she explained. Everyone has to rely on their other senses just like I do every day. The first fat drops of rain began to fall and Colton took her elbow. We should get inside before we're soaked, but Josephine hesitated. Could we? Could we stay just for a moment? I want to feel the rain. He was quiet for a beat, then said, All right, just for a moment. They stood together as the rain intensified, cool drops splashing on Josephine's upturned face. She spread her arms slightly, embracing the sensation, a smile spreading across her face. You're beautiful, Colton said suddenly, his voice barely audible over the rain. Josephine's arms lowered slowly, her smile fading into uncertainty. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? It's the truth. Because I can't see if you mean it, she replied, vulnerability creeping into her voice. I can't see your expression, can't tell if you're smiling or if pity is in your eyes. His hand found hers, entwining their fingers. Josie, look at me. When she turned her face up toward his voice, his other hand came up to cup her cheek. Feel my face. Tell me what you find there. With trembling fingers, she reached up, tracing the contours of his features. She felt the strong line of his jaw, rough with stubble, the straight nose, eyebrows that arched beneath her touch, and lips that parted slightly as her fingertips grazed them. What do you feel? He asked, his breath warm against her palm. Not pity, she whispered. The rain fell harder, soaking them both, but neither moved. Colton's hand slid from her cheek to the back of her neck, drawing her closer. "I'm going to kiss you now," he murmured. "If you don't want me to, say so." Josephine said nothing, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain he must hear it. Then his lips were on hers, gentle at first, then more insistent. She melted into him, her hands finding their way to his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing to match her own. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. The storm raged around them, but Josephine felt only the storm within a whirlwind of emotions she had never expected to experience. "We should go inside," Colton said, his voice husky. This time, Josephine didn't protest as he led her back into the house, both of them dripping on the wooden floor. "What was that?" Rebecca asked from across the room. "You two are drenched." "Just enjoying the storm," Colton replied, his hand still holding Josephine's. Rebecca's silence suggested she didn't quite believe this explanation, but she simply said, "I'll fetch some towels." Later that night, lying in her bed listening to the rain on the roof, Josephine touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the pressure of Colton's kiss. It was madness, she knew. She had been at the ranch less than a month. She knew nothing of this man beyond what he had chosen to share, and yet, a soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Josie, are you awake?" Colton's voice was low, mindful of his sleeping sister in the adjacent room. "Yes," she answered, sitting up and pulling her shawl around her shoulders. "Come in." The door creaked open and she heard him step inside, closing it behind him. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Kept thinking about what happened on the porch." "Me too," she confessed. She felt the bed dip as he sat on the edge, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "I meant what I said, Josie. You are beautiful, and it's not just your face, though that's lovely too. It's your spirit, your determination, the way you've adapted to this place without complaint." "Colton, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I know we haven't known each other long, and I know your situation is complicated. You came here because you had nowhere else to go. I don't want you to feel beholden to me, or to think that I expect anything from you in return for bringing you here." Josephine reached out, finding his hand in the darkness. "Is that what you think? That I kissed you out of gratitude or obligation?" "The thought crossed my mind," he admitted. She squeezed his hand. "I kissed you because I wanted to. Because in the short time I've been here, you've shown me more kindness and respect than anyone has in years. You don't treat me like I'm broken or helpless. You see me, Colton, really see me." He was quiet for a long moment, then brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I don't know what this is between us," he said, "but I'd like to find out if you're willing." "I'm willing," she whispered. He released her hand and stood. "Good night, Josie." "Good night, Colton." After he left, Josephine lay back down, a smile spreading across her face. For the first time since her father's death, she felt a spark of hope for her future, a future that, just a month ago, had seemed bleak and uncertain. The following days brought subtle changes to the ranch. Colton found reasons to be home more often, taking his meals with Josephine and Rebecca rather than eating cold biscuits in the saddle. His hands found excuses to touch Josephine's, helping her carry water from the well, guiding her over uneven ground, passing her items at the dinner table. Rebecca noticed, of course. "My brother's sweet on you," she informed Josephine one afternoon as they shelled peas on the porch. Josephine's fingers stilled. "Does that bother you?" "No," Rebecca said after a thoughtful pause. "I like having you here. The house feels more like a home with you in it, and Colton smiles more. Before you came, I can't remember the last time I heard him laugh." "Really?" Josephine couldn't keep the pleasure from her voice. "Really. Our parents' deaths hit him hard. He took on too much responsibility too young. Felt like he had to be strong for me, never showing how much he was hurting." Rebecca's voice softened. But with you, he's different. More like the brother I remember from before. Josephine resumed her shelling, considering Rebecca's words. I care for him too, she admitted. I know, Rebecca replied, and Josephine could hear the smile in her voice. A blind person could see that. Josephine gasped in mock offense, then burst into laughter when she realized Rebecca was teasing her. It felt good to laugh, to share confidences like sisters. Another unexpected gift from the man who had taken her hand at the trading post. June brought scorching heat and the first cattle drive of the season. Colton would be gone for nearly 2 weeks, taking a portion of the herd to Denver to sell. The night before his departure, he and Josephine walked to the edge of the property, to a small rise that overlooked the valley. They sat on a blanket he'd brought, shoulders touching, as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I wish you could see the stars tonight, he said. They're like diamonds scattered across blue velvet. I remember stars, she said softly. My father used to take me to the roof of our building in St. Louis to look at them. He taught me the constellations Orion, the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia. Colton's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her closer. I'll miss you while I'm gone, he murmured into her hair. I'll miss you too. She turned in his embrace, her hand finding his chest. Be careful, always am. He kissed her then, a deep, lingering kiss that made her dizzy with wanting when they broke apart. Both breathing heavily, Colton pressed his forehead to hers. Josie, I need to tell you something before I go. What is it? She asked, sensing the seriousness in his tone. I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. I don't expect you to say it back. I just wanted you to know before I leave. Josephine's heart soared at his declaration, but a nagging doubt tempered her joy. How can you be sure? You barely know me. I know enough, he insisted. I know you're strong and kind and brave. I know you can make a meal out of practically nothing and that you sing to yourself when you think no one's listening. I know you like the smell of coffee but prefer tea. I know your laugh makes me want to be a better man. Tears pricked at Josephine's eyes. Colton, you don't have to say anything now, he assured her. I just wanted you to have something to think about while I'm gone. I'll think of nothing else, she promised. The 2 weeks of Colton's absence crawled by. Josephine threw herself into her work, cleaning the house from top to bottom, baking bread and pies, even learning to milk the cow under Rebecca's guidance. At night, she lay awake thinking of Colton's declaration, examining her own feelings. Did she love him? The question consumed her. She had never been in love before, had never expected to be loved in return. Her blindness had always seemed an insurmountable barrier, a reason for others to pity rather than desire her. Yet Colton saw past it, saw her for who she truly was. You're wool gathering again, Rebecca observed one evening as they sat mending shirts. A penny for your thoughts. Just wondering when Colton will return, Josephine replied, not entirely untruthfully. He said 2 weeks. It's been 12 days. Rebecca paused in her stitching. You miss him. I do. He'll be back soon, Rebecca assured her. And then you two can stop dancing around each other and admit you're in love. Josephine nearly stabbed herself with the needle. Is it that obvious? Rebecca laughed. Only to anyone with eyes. She immediately gasped. I'm sorry, that was thoughtless. But Josephine was laughing too. It's all right. I rather enjoy your bluntness. Most people are so careful around me, afraid they'll say the wrong thing. Well, I've never been accused of being too careful with my words, Rebecca admitted. Our mother used to say my tongue would be the death of me. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats approaching the house. Rebecca jumped up. That must be Colton. He's early. Josephine's heart leapt, but as the riders drew closer, Rebecca's excited voice turned wary. That's not Colton's horse, and there's more than one rider. Fear prickled along Josephine's spine. Who is it? I don't know, Rebecca replied, moving to the window. 3 men. I don't recognize them. A heavy knock sounded at the door. Rebecca hesitated, then said, "Stay here," and went to answer it. Josephine heard the door open, followed by a man's voice smooth as silk but with an undercurrent of menace. "Evening, miss. Name's Garrett. My friends and I are looking for Colton Davis." "He's not here," Rebecca replied, her voice admirably steady. "He's gone to Denver with a cattle drive." "When do you expect him back?" the man pressed. "Not for several days. Can I help you with something?" "That depends." The floorboards creaked as the man stepped closer. "Are you his wife?" "I'm his sister," Rebecca said. "Rebecca Davis." "Ah," the man sounded pleased. "And who might this lovely lady be?" Josephine realized with a start that the man was looking at her. She stood, setting aside her mending. "Josephine James. I work for Mr. Davis." "Is that so?" Footsteps approached her, and she fought the urge to step back. "Seems mighty convenient for a man to have 2 pretty women all to himself out here." "What do you want with my brother?" Rebecca demanded, diverting the man's attention. "He and I have some unfinished business," Garrett replied. From his days in Texas. Josephine's mind raced. Colton had mentioned living in Texas before coming to Colorado, but he rarely spoke of his time there. "Whatever business you have with him will have to wait until he returns," Rebecca insisted. "Now, if you'll excuse us, it's getting late." "We've ridden a long way, Miss Davis," Garrett said, his tone hardening. "I think we'll wait right here for your brother." "That's not possible," Rebecca began, but was cut off by the sound of a gun being cocked. "I don't believe I was asking permission," Garrett said coldly. Josephine's blood ran cold. She took a step forward, placing herself between the man and Rebecca. "There's no need for weapons, sir. We have a small cabin out back where the ranch hands stay during roundup. You're welcome to use it while you wait for Mr. Davis." A tense silence followed her offer. Finally, Garrett spoke, his voice warmer. "Well now, that's mighty hospitable of you, Miss James. We accept your kind offer. Jake," he called to one of his companions, "go check out this cabin, make sure it's suitable." Footsteps retreated, the front door opened and closed, and Josephine heard a horse trot away. "While we're waiting," Garrett continued, "perhaps you ladies could offer some refreshment. It's thirsty work, tracking a man across 3 states. "I'll make coffee," Rebecca said stiffly. "Make it for all of us, won't you?" Garrett requested. "My friend Tom and I would be obliged to share your company a while longer." As Rebecca moved to the stove, Josephine felt a hand on her elbow. "Sit with me, Miss James," Garrett urged, guiding her to the table. "Tell me how a beautiful blind woman came to be working on a remote cattle ranch." The question was posed innocently enough, but Josephine sensed the suspicion behind it. "Mr. Davis was kind enough to offer me employment when I found myself without prospects in Kingston," she answered truthfully. "I manage the household while Miss Davis tends to the garden and animals." "Most men wouldn't hire a blind housekeeper," Garrett observed. "Mr. Davis is not most men," Garrett laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "On that, Miss James, we are in complete agreement." The cabin door opened again and Jake returned. "Cabin's clear, basic, but it'll do." "Excellent," Garrett said. "Now about that coffee." For the next hour, Josephine and Rebecca endured the men's company, answering questions about the ranch and deliberately vague inquiries about Colton's business affairs. Josephine revealed as little as possible, uncertain what information might put Colton at risk. Finally, Garrett stood. "Ladies, we thank you for your hospitality. We'll retire to the cabin now and return in the morning. I trust you won't attempt to leave during the night." "Where would we go?" Rebecca asked. "The nearest neighbor is 10 miles away." "Smart girl," Garrett approved. "Sleep well." After the men left, Rebecca immediately barred the door and checked that all the windows were secure. "Who are they? What do they want with Colton?" she whispered, fear evident in her voice. I don't know, Josephine replied, equally quiet, but they're dangerous. That Garrett has the voice of a man who enjoys causing pain. We need to warn Colton, Rebecca decided. He's due back the day after tomorrow, if we could somehow get a message to him. The Petersons, Josephine suggested, referring to their nearest neighbors. Could you ride there tonight after these men are asleep? Rebecca hesitated. I can't leave you alone with them. You must, Josephine insisted. I'll be fine. They have no reason to harm me, but Colton needs to know what he's riding into. After much debate, Rebecca reluctantly agreed. They waited until after midnight, when the light in the cabin had long been extinguished and no sounds came from outside. Rebecca dressed in Colton's clothes, making herself as boyish as possible in case she was spotted. Be careful, Josephine whispered, embracing her at the door. I'll be back by dawn, Rebecca promised. Bar the door behind me and don't open it for anyone but me or Colton. After Rebecca slipped away, Josephine secured the door and retreated to her room, too anxious to sleep. She sat in the rocking chair by the window, straining her ears for any sound of trouble. Hours passed in tense silence. As the first hint of dawn lightened the sky an event Josephine could sense, rather than see through a subtle change in the air, she heard horses approaching. Too many horses for it to be just Rebecca returning, footsteps on the porch, then a knock at the door. Miss James, Miss Davis, it's Garrett, rise and shine. Josephine didn't answer, hoping he would think they were still asleep. Ladies, I know you're in there, Garrett called, his voice hardening. Open the door or I'll open it for you. Taking a deep breath, Josephine made her way to the front door. One moment, please, she called, trying to sound sleepy. She unlocked and opened the door, keeping her expression neutral despite her fear. Good morning, Miss James, Garrett greeted her. Where's the charming Miss Davis? Still asleep, Josephine lied. She was unwell during the night. I thought it best to let her rest. Garrett clearly didn't believe her. Tom, check the house. Footsteps pushed past Josephine, moving through the small home. Moments later, the man returned. She's not here, boss, and one of the horses is missing from the corral. Garrett's hand suddenly gripped Josephine's arm, fingers digging painfully into her flesh. Where is she? He demanded. I don't know, Josephine maintained, wincing at his grip. Perhaps she went for an early ride. Or perhaps she went to warn her brother, Garrett suggested, his voice dangerously soft. How unfortunate for you, Miss James. He pulled her roughly out onto the porch. Jake, saddle the horses. Tom, bring some rope. It seems we need to set a trap for our elusive cowboy. Fear coursed through Josephine as rough hands bound her wrists behind her back. She was lifted onto a horse, positioned in front of Garrett, his arm like iron around her waist. Now we wait, he said, his breath hot against her ear. And when Davis shows up, he'll find you. And then we'll finally settle our score. The hours crawled by as they waited at the edge of the property, hidden among the trees where they could see the approach to the ranch house. Josephine's shoulders ached from the awkward position of her bound hands, and her mouth was dry with fear and thirst. What did Colton do to make you hunt him across 3 states? She finally asked, breaking the long silence. Garrett shifted behind her. He killed my brother. The blunt answer shocked her. I don't believe that, she said after a moment. Colton's not a killer. Garrett laughed bitterly. Every man can be a killer in the right circumstances, Miss James. Your precious cowboy shot my brother in the back during a card game in Dallas, then fled before he could hang for it. There must be more to the story, Josephine insisted. Colton would never shoot someone in the back. You seem mighty certain of a man you've known for, a couple of months. Josephine lifted her chin. I am certain. Then you're a fool, Garrett spat, and fools seldom live long out here. A tense silence fell, broken only by the occasional bird call and the rustle of leaves in the light breeze. Then, in the distance, Josephine heard the thunder of approaching hooves, many more than she expected. "Boss," Jake's voice was taut with concern, "that's not just Davis. There's at least 5 riders with him." "Damn it," Garrett swore. "The sister must have reached him in time." Josephine's heart soared with hope, but it was short-lived as Garrett yanked her from the saddle, dragging her in front of him with a gun pressed to her temple. "Come on out, Davis," he shouted as the riders approached. "I've got something of yours." The horses slowed, then stopped. Josephine strained to hear, trying to identify the riders by the sound of their movements. "Let her go, Garrett," Colton's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "This is between you and me. It became her business when she helped your sister warn you," Garrett replied. "Now, tell your friends to back off or the lady gets a bullet. You harm one hair on her head and you're a dead man," Colton promised, his voice deadly calm. "Bold words from a back shooter," Garrett sneered. "Drop your guns, all of you, then we'll talk." A tense moment passed, then Josephine heard the thud of weapons hitting the ground. "Wise choice," Garrett approved. "Now, Davis, you're going to pay for what you did to my brother." "Your brother drew on me first, Garrett," Colton replied steadily. "Everyone in that saloon saw it." The sheriff ruled it self-defense. "Liar," Garrett shouted, the gun pressing harder against Josephine's head. "Michael never drew first in his life. He did that night," Colton insisted. "He was cheating. When I called him on it, he went for his gun. I was faster." "Shut up." Garrett's voice was ragged with emotion. "You're going to die today, Davis. The only question is whether this woman dies with you." Josephine felt the tension in the air, thick as molasses. Her mind raced, searching for a way to defuse the situation before someone got killed. "Mr. Garrett," she said carefully, "killing Colton won't bring your brother back. It will only ensure that you hang for murder." "She's right," Colton added. "The sheriff and his deputies are with me. You fire that gun, you won't leave this valley alive." Garrett's arm tightened around Josephine's waist. "Maybe that's a price I'm willing to pay." "And is Miss James's life a price you're willing to pay as well?" Colton challenged. "She's innocent in this. Let her go and you can have me." "Colton, no." Josephine cried, struggling against Garrett's grip. "Be still," Garrett hissed in her ear. "Let the woman go, Garrett," a new voice called, older, authoritative. "You've got no quarrel with her." "Sheriff Peterson," Garrett greeted the newcomer. "Come to see justice done." "I came to prevent a murder," the sheriff replied. "Now I know about Dallas. I sent a wire to the sheriff there after Davis told me you might be coming. Got a reply yesterday confirming what he said. It was self-defense, clean and legal." "That's a lie," Garrett insisted, but Josephine could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. "I've got the telegram in my pocket," Sheriff Peterson said. "Your brother was known for cheating at cards and drawing on men who called him out. He finally drew on the wrong man." The gun at Josephine's temple wavered slightly. She held her breath, sensing Garrett's internal struggle. "Even if that's true," he finally said, "he was still my brother, my only family." "I understand that," the sheriff acknowledged, his voice softening. "But killing these people won't honor his memory. It'll just get you killed or hanged." A long, tense moment passed. Then, slowly, Garrett lowered the gun from Josephine's head. "Step away from me," he ordered her. She complied immediately, stumbling forward on unsteady legs. Strong arms caught her Colton's arms and she collapsed against his chest, trembling with relief. "I've got you," he murmured, holding her tight. "You're safe now." Behind them, Josephine heard the sounds of Garrett and his men being disarmed and arrested. But she focused only on Colton, the steady beat of his heart under her ear, the warmth of his arms around her, the scent of leather and horses that had come to mean home. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands gently examining her face, her shoulders, finding the rope burns on her wrists. "No," she assured him, "just frightened. Is Rebecca all right?" "She's fine. She reached the Petersons yesterday afternoon. They sent riders to intercept me on the trail from Denver." His voice was tight with emotion. "I almost lost you." "But you didn't," she reminded him, touching his face. "You saved me." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Josie, when I heard Garrett had you, I've never been so scared in my life. It made me realize something." "What's that?" she asked, her hands curling into the fabric of his shirt. "I don't want to spend another day of my life without you," he said. "I love you, Josephine James. Will you marry me?" The question took her breath away. Around them, the chaos of the arrests continued, but in that moment, it was as if they were the only two people in the world. "Are you certain?" she whispered. "I'll always be blind. I'll always need help with some things. And I'll always be your eyes," he promised. "For as long as you'll have me." Joy bloomed in Josephine's heart, spreading through her entire being. "Then yes," she said, smiling up at him. "Yes, I'll marry you." He kissed her then in front of the sheriff, his deputies, and God himself, a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and protection, of partnership and passion. "Ahem," Sheriff Peterson cleared his throat nearby. "Sorry to interrupt, but we'll be taking these men to town now. Davis, you and the ladies might want to come in tomorrow to make statements." "We'll be there," Colton confirmed, his arm still securely around Josephine's waist. As the sheriff and his prisoners departed, Rebecca rushed to embrace Josephine. "Thank God you're safe. I was so worried." "I'm fine," Josephine assured her, hugging back tightly. "Thanks to your bravery." "Did I hear my brother propose marriage just now?" Rebecca asked, a smile evident in her voice. "You did," Colton confirmed, "and she accepted." Rebecca squealed with delight, hugging them both. "I'm getting a sister." "Oh, this calls for a celebration." The three returned to the ranch house, where Rebecca insisted on preparing a special dinner despite the day's traumatic events. As the women worked in the kitchen, Colton sat at the table, unwilling to let Josephine out of his sight. "How was the cattle drive?" Josephine asked, trying to restore some normalcy to the day. "Profitable," Colton replied. "Got a good price in Denver, enough to build an addition to the house." "An addition?" Rebecca echoed. "What for?" "Well, now that I'm getting married, I thought we might want more space," Colton explained. "Maybe a proper bedroom for the newlyweds and eventually a nursery." Josephine nearly dropped the plate she was holding. "A nursery," she repeated, her cheeks heating. "Unless you don't want children," Colton said quickly. "I should have asked." "No, I do," Josephine interrupted. I didn't think you'd want to start a family so soon." "Life's too short to wait for happiness," Colton said softly. "I learned that today." That night, after Rebecca had gone to bed, Colton and Josephine sat on the porch swing, her head resting on his shoulder as he described the stars overhead. "When do you want to get married?" he asked, his fingers combing through her hair. "Soon," she replied. "I don't need anything fancy. Just you, me, Rebecca, and a preacher. No friends from back east you want to invite. No family." Josephine shook her head. "The only family that matters to me is right here on this ranch." Colton's arm tightened around her. 2 weeks from Sunday, then. "Give us time to get a dress made for you in town." 2 weeks from Sunday, she agreed, tilting her face up to his. He kissed her, a gentle kiss that gradually deepened, full of promise and passion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Colton groaned. "These next 2 weeks are going to be the longest of my life," he complained, making Josephine laugh. True to his word, 2 weeks later, Josephine stood in the small church in Kingston, wearing a cream-colored dress that Rebecca had helped select. Though she couldn't see the gathered well-wishers, friends from town, neighboring ranchers, and even Harold Wilkins from the trading post, she could feel their presence. their happiness for the unlikely couple. As Preacher Johnson pronounced them man and wife, Colton kissed her with such tenderness that tears sprang to her eyes. "Hello, Mrs. Davis," he whispered against her lips. "Hello, husband," she whispered back. The wedding celebration continued at the Peterson Ranch, larger than the Davis place and better suited to hosting the crowd. Josephine danced in Colton's arms, trusting him completely to guide her steps, just as she now trusted him to guide her through life. "Happy?" he asked, his lips close to her ear. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied truthfully. That night, when they returned to their ranch, Colton carried her across the threshold of their home, setting her gently on her feet in the living room. "Welcome home, Mrs. Davis," he said, his voice husky with emotion. Josephine reached up, touching his face, tracing the features she had come to know so well. "I love you, Colton Davis, with all my heart." "And I love you," he replied, gathering her into his arms. "From the moment I saw you sitting alone in that trading post, I knew my life would never be the same." Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Josephine rested her head on Colton's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come into the trading post that day?" she asked. "No," he replied, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Because I believe some things are meant to be, Josie. You and me, we were meant to find each other." "Even though I can't see?" she asked, voicing the insecurity that still sometimes plagued her. "Your blindness is part of who you are, but it's not all you are," he said firmly. "And who you are is exactly who I want to spend my life with." She smiled against his skin. "You always know exactly what to say." "Not always," he chuckled. "But I promise to always tell you the truth, even when it's hard to hear. That's what partners do." "Partners," she repeated, liking the sound of it. "Not master and servant, not even husband and wife, but partners, equals." Despite her disability, in the years that followed, the Davis Ranch flourished. Colton's careful management and shrewd business sense turned their modest operation into one of the most successful in the county. The house expanded as their family did first with the arrival of Michael James Davis, named in a gesture of reconciliation toward the past, and 2 years later with little Rebecca Elizabeth, who had her mother's chestnut hair and her father's piercing blue eyes. Josephine thrived as well. With Colton's encouragement, she began teaching music to the children in Kingston, having discovered that her lack of sight had enhanced her already considerable musical talents. Twice a week, Colton would drive her into town, where eager students awaited piano and singing lessons from Mrs. Davis. Rebecca eventually married a young doctor who came to Kingston to establish a practice, moving into town but visiting the ranch often. On one such visit, as the extended family gathered for Sunday dinner, 5-year-old Michael asked a question that made the adults pause. "Mama, do you wish you could see us?" he asked, his child's curiosity unfiltered by adult propriety. The table fell silent, all eyes on Josephine. She smiled, reaching out to touch her son's face, mapping his features as she had done with Colton all those years ago. "Sometimes I do wish I could see your face," she admitted, "but I see you in other ways. I know the sound of your laughter, the feel of your hand in mine, the way you stomp your feet when you're angry." The boy considered this. "But don't you want to know what we look like?" "Your father tells me," she explained. "He describes everything to me: the color of your hair, the freckles on your nose, how tall you're growing." "He's your eyes," Michael realized. "Yes," Josephine agreed, reaching for Colton's hand across the table. "He's been my eyes since the day we met." Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Colton and Josephine sat on the porch swing that had become their favorite spot for quiet conversations. The ranch was peaceful. The cattle settled for the night. the only sounds the chirping of crickets and the soft creak of the swing. 10 years, Colton mused, his arm around his wife's shoulders. 10 years ago today, I walked into that trading post and found you. The best day of my life, Josephine said, snuggling closer to him. Mine too, he agreed. Though our wedding day and the days our children were born are tied for close seconds. Josephine laughed, the same laugh that had first captivated him a decade earlier. Do you remember what you said to me that day? When you offered to bring me here, "I'll be your eyes," he quoted softly. And you have been, she said, turning to face him. But you've been so much more than that, Colton. You've been my strength when I was weak, my courage when I was afraid, my hope when I had none. He kissed her gently. And you've been my heart, Josie, my whole heart. As the stars shone overhead, stars she would never see but knew were there. Because he told her so, Josephine Davis thanked God for the cruel twist of fate that had left her alone at a trading post in Kingston, Colorado. For it was there, in her darkest hour, that she had found the light of her life, a cowboy who took her hand and promised to be her eyes, who saw her not for what she lacked, but for everything she was. And in the end, that was all anyone could ask for, to be truly seen, truly known, and truly loved.